morning. Take a listen.
The NFL is 70% African American, and it really pains me to see a lot of young black players who, most of them grew up like I did, without a dad, without having much. My mother raised me on welfare. We didn't have much, and so I was very fortunate to get the opportunity to play professional football, and I took advantage of it. And to see some of these guys that really could care less about the opportunity to take care of their family or take care of their mother, who a lot of times is providing for them without much, really, really pains me.
Stephen A., I know how much you care about your community. What's your reaction to what you just heard from Booger McFarland?
I'm sad in that regard. It's painfully correct. Here's the deal. Black folks, particularly black men, ain't the only one to have issues. Latinos, whites, alcohol, drugs, etc. So I don't want anybody to interpret what I'm about to say in any way that it's a black problem. It's a problem. But I'm a black man. I love my people. And under no circumstances am I going to apologize by focusing on my community. Because when we consider America and the fact that the white populace in this country makes up 66% of the population, and the Latino population is not a dominant minority at 17%, and the black community in terms of numbers dissipating from 15% to 14% to 13% over the years, we seem to be going in the wrong direction. There's an elevated level of concern that me as a black man am going to express. And by that, I say this. If you out there smoking weed, for example, as much as I might not like that, that's not what I do, I'm not calling you on the carpet if you're not doing harm to yourself or anybody else. When I talk about stay off the weed, I am talking about players in the NFL, specifically, who religiously cost themselves millions upon millions of dollars because of absence of discipline. It's not about whether the rule is right or wrong. It's about you knowing what the rules are before you sign that contract to commit to play in this league under their stewardship, under the guise of their rules and regulations. And if you don't follow it, you know what the price is going to be, and you do it anyway. That is a problem. Other behavioral issues that we've seen encountered by a vast majority of African Americans in the National Football League. It's a problem. It's also a problem that whether it's right or wrong, we're not seeing the imagery of folks from other ethnicities permeated over the airwaves. We see black, 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 black everywhere. And the fact is, that's a reality that we have to deal with as a community. One of the things that always made me proud, and Donovan and I have had our disagreements over the years, and I love him dearly, but he knows we have had our disagreements because I've always wanted him to speak out more because I knew he had a lot to say. Donovan has always been intelligent. Donovan has been well thought of. His family is phenomenal. And none of us are perfect. But by and large, when you consider the way he went about the business of conducting himself as a professional, I remember him taking hits from some of his own contemporaries, quietly, privately, anonymously, because they felt like he was too clean cut. These are the kind of things that we battle as a community time and time again, and we need to find a way to overcome it, because the only people that we're hurting are ourselves.
Look, there's always this argument whenever this comes up. You hear two camps. You hear one camp talk about institutional unfairness, and you hear another camp talk about personal responsibility within a community. And both have valid points to make, and they're not mutually exclusive. But I think what's going on here, to Booger McFarland's point, is the league is 70% African American. And when you say the league, you're talking about 32 NFL teams, with, like, when you count the practice squad, what, 75 players on each team? And then you're talking about all the college programs, because a lot of these issues are coming up right now. We're talking about draft picks. So we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of people, many of whom come from disadvantaged backgrounds. So you have that. From that population, you will find some criminals. I mean, that's how it works on any population, white, black, or otherwise, but particularly given the circumstances described, especially when the history of this country has resulted, obviously, as we all know, in lower levels of education, per capita income, opportunity, etc., for African Americans. So you're dealing with a population where, you, like as in any population, you will find a criminal element. There are just too many people in that population to not have that. And then you have the proliferation of media. Everyone has a camera phone. You are going to catch bad behavior. It will be circulated. You will find it. In the league that's 70% African American, many of the perpetrators will be African American, especially when you consider the number of players coming from college and in the league. But there's also something else. When people roll their eyes and say, look at this opportunity that these young men are getting, and they're right. Of course, no one's entitled to anything. They're right. But you also have to ask, how many of these kids, many of them are, but many of them aren't, ready to be thrown into the deep end? When you consider the background and then the environment they're going to enter, including just college environment, how many are prepared for it, and by whom? Because oftentimes the funnel that gets them there are from people who don't have necessarily their best interests in mind, even though they're presented with an excellent opportunity. But they're funneled there by people who want to exploit them. Right? So I think all that adds up to, yeah, sometimes you're going to find video of misbehavior and accusations and even charges, and oftentimes they'll be true. And I don't know if it's more of a problem now than it's ever been, or if people, because of the proliferation of media, are more aware of it.
You know, I look at it in a sense, and it's unfair because obviously we do look up and we see black, 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 and you wonder, you know, and I think from an eye standpoint, I think people kind of take the understanding of thinking, you know, that it's all black people. And I'm with Stephen A. I only speak for my own race because, you know, when I look in the crowd today, I see my people. They're here to support us. And so they understand kind of the things that are asked of us. Stephen A. brought up the way I handle things. Now, I'm not perfect by any means. Everyone can kind of go in to find out what's happened to me or what I've been involved in. And I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the most perfect guy out here. But the most important thing, while I played, I understood the game. And the game can be played in many ways, not just on the field, but off the field. And for these young men coming into the draft, they need to understand how to play the game. You're not invincible. Just because people may say you're a top 10 pick doesn't mean you're untouchable. And I think for these kids that are in college, if they're smoking weed or if they're, whatever it is, drinking or whatever it may be, they don't understand the things that you have to do in order to be at that elite level and to be paid like an elite person, an elite player. And they're coming from backgrounds like Booger talked about, just like him. Now, I had my mother and father in the household. You know, things weren't always great. We didn't live in the suburban house that, you know, some people have been raised in. We moved into a suburban house because my dad worked overtime. My mom worked 2 jobs. But it was still one in which I was raised a different way, but you've still been raised by somebody, if it's by one parent or if it's by 2. Yeah. There's things that you learn throughout the course of your childhood that you have to put in consideration when you get older, learning how to play the game. And that's doing the right things under the rules that are set for you to be successful.
And it's very important, as I say this, being from Hollis, Queens, New York City, growing up, being surrounded, drugs, drug dealers, the whole 9. They saved my life, kept me off the streets, even though they were on it. But let's be clear about something here. When Donovan talks about playing the game, people look at that as not being real.
Right.
It's being very real because the game is very real. You can't have an attitude, I'm going to do what I want, when I want, how I want, with whom I want, but could you give me some money? Doesn't work that way, because ultimately, in order to get gold, you have to capitulate to those who have it to give. And a lot of times, folks don't want to accept that. What I do love about the NFL, despite the fact that we might feel things about the weed policy and other things and their hypocrisy, what I do love is the fact that they are putting out on Front Street, you don't run our product. Yeah. We do, and if you want to participate, you're going to have to acquiesce. And that's a very important lesson for all communities with the generations on the come up to learn, because we got too many youngsters out here who want to do what the hell they want to do and don't believe they have to answer to anybody. That is not reality. That is not reality.
It's called Not for Long for a reason, right? The National Football League. But again, I want to reiterate, this isn't just a black or African American issue. The domestic violence and weed and all these different things we're seeing in this draft, all races are
but it is important that the black athlete recognize your face is the one that's being plastered all over the place. Black, 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 black everywhere. Right. We can sit up there and act like we don't notice, but it's very noticeable. Very.
We'll leave it there. Donovan's sticking with us. When we come back, we're going to talk more about quarterbacks and this year's NFL draft. We want you guys to keep weighing in on our poll. Which quarterback do you want taken by your team? These guys will make their choice after the break. First take on Beach in South Philly. First take on the road for the NFL draft. We so appreciate our First Take fam here with us. And, of course, Donovan McNabb, too. We asked our Twitter followers a little earlier in the show, which quarterback would you rather have? Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Watson, or other? The results are in. So 64% would take Watson, 18% Trubisky, 18% other. I found that last one a bit interesting. Max, I want to start with you. Do you agree with Twitter that Watson is the way to go?
I do, particularly when it seems like you'd have to reach for Trubisky, and Watson may fall to who wants him, like Cleveland, for example, with the 12th pick. Look, I get that talent evaluators are looking at tape and video and projecting how it will play in the pros, and many of them prefer Trubisky. I get that. But I always listen to, like, the typical football analyst guy, and what you hear about guys like Ben Roethlisberger is that's just a football player. Not just a quarterback, but a football player out there making football plays. To me, that's Deshaun Watson. That guy is a football player making football plays. He's a competitor. He's a guy who not only is versatile. I mean, you read option, quarterback draws, whatever you want to do, buying time in the pocket. He can do a lot of that stuff. You can use him in those ways. But then he refuses to lose. Like, in the moment of truth, he gets it done time and again. Even in the national title game, you heard the broadcast. Boy, he's taking these hits. He just has a look of a guy who's taking like body shots. And this dude just picked himself up and willed his team to win. So if you give me the physical attributes and you give me that stuff, and it's not like a Tim Tebow level of technical flaws in his delivery and stuff. And by the way, even then, Tim Tebow went 7-4 and won a playoff game. But you give me all that stuff in a superior technical package, he's available. I'm taking him.
He's a winner.
I'm not going with the whole football, analyst that a lot of people like to say he's a grinder. He's a film watcher. He's so smart and intelligent. Look, this man is a winner. And that's what it's all about. Being a quarterback, when you're coming from a winning tradition, you understand what it takes to get your team to that position. And not only that, but to get over that hump, that is Deshaun Watson. And the numbers speak for himself. Everything that we've seen throughout his career, the kid continued to improve each and every year. High expectations came into it this year because he went to the national championship. Everyone thought that they were going to get back. And the reason that they got back to that position was because of Deshaun Watson. Now, we can look at Trubisky, yeah. There may be an upside because we don't know. We haven't seen enough. Teams haven't been able to watch the film and be able to bounce back now in his second season as a starter and be able to attack him. So we don't know. Patrick Mahomes, I look at him and I say he's got more of an upside than Trubisky because of his ability to make plays, extend plays. He's got a strong arm. He can play from the pocket, and you've seen the plays that he was able to make. The only problem with Mahomes is, he's coming from a pedigree like we've seen, Johnny Manziel. That was what Johnny Manziel was. It was a guy that can throw it from anywhere, but more importantly, he was getting outside the pocket and making great plays. But that doesn't work in the NFL. You have to be able to work the 3-step, 5-step, 7-step drop. The read option, to me, is more like the wildcat. It shouldn't even been in the NFL because it's killing quarterbacks and it's killing the development of that quarterback. You have to be able to turn around, hand it off to the running back, or drop back and get it to your tight end or wide receiver. Hit that 18 to 20-yard deep out cut. Be able to put that foot in the ground in 5th step and hit that speed out.
One thing doesn't mean you can't do the other.
Well, the thing is, it's like a computer. If you're constantly putting things into that computer, that's what it's going to be used to. So if you're a read option quarterback, what do people like to do? Label them as read option quarterbacks. So now you have these mastermind offensive coordinators say, I have a guy that I can put in different situations, a la RG3. RG3 was playing from the pocket at Baylor. He had the ability to get outside the pocket. That was a bonus. But when he got to Washington, that's what Kyle Shanahan and Mike Shanahan put him in that box, and all of a sudden it became a read option until he got hurt. Then he came out and said, I want to be a pocket passer.
And didn't have the reps in at an early enough phase.
Well, you have to be able to train these quarterbacks. Just because they won the Heisman don't mean that they're great quarterbacks. The league is faster. Everyone is smarter. You're playing against grown men, guys with 3, 4 kids at home, and I'm going to look at you and say, hey, if you ain't got it right, you got to go. I got to feed my family. I don't care how old you are. So you have to develop these young quarterbacks to be what they need to be successful.
But Trubisky's your third option.
He's my third option, absolutely.
Here's what disgusts me about this subject. If I were Deshaun Watson, or if I were a quarterback on the collegiate level and I had any cachet, I had the ability to sit up there and tell NFL scouts, NFL teams, y'all could kiss where you know what, I would do it. And here's why. Because if you are Deshaun Watson, who in 2 national championship games passed for over 850 yards, won a national championship, was 32-3 as a starting quarterback in big-time college football, and has proven himself to be a winner. You got a coach in Dabo Swinney calling this dude the Jordan of the draft in terms of not just his ability, but his class, where his head is at, his intelligence, his leadership ability, and all of these intangibles. And I'm going to drop in the draft because of some dude in the Tar Heels. It ain't basketball we're talking about here. This is football. The Tar Heel. When the hell have they been in a national championship picture? And this dude starts 13 games? Okay, and we didn't even hear much about him until the damn draft was approaching. And I'm going to lose. With all I've accomplished, if I'm Deshaun Watson, with all that I've accomplished in college football, I get relegated for him? And why am I talking to you? Why am I wasting my time? Why am I getting half naked, having you measure my vertical leaps, how much I run and all of this stuff, my eating habits, who I date, getting all in my... Why am I even talking to you if I got to sit up here and be relegated for some dude who was a damn no-name until the draft was approaching because he had 13 starts? Look, I wouldn't even show up. Just draft me. Just draft me.
Deshaun
or
Watson,
not.
to me, it would be the first quarterback I would take. But the thing about the NFL is it's ruthless in terms of this stuff. They really don't care what you did on one level. If they evaluate you and go,
then why I got to go through all of that?
He's not accurate enough with the deep ball. That guy's more accurate. That's the way.
All I'm trying to say is this: I should not have. Right. If I'm a Deshaun Watson, I should not have. I'm not talking about just him. I'm talking about all the Deshaun Watsons of the world. I should not have to be subjected to the personal elements of scrutiny. Damn it! Watch the tape. You saw what I did. Make your call. You got plenty of video. That's really what it is.
And the funny thing about this, and being an African-American quarterback, I'm with you, Stephen A., it's always something negative that they want to bring up, the accuracy. But they bring up the mobility and how our arm strength is. The thing that reminds me of this particular draft, it goes back to Cam Newton. Cam Newton. When Cam Newton, all of a sudden, he was the best player in college football.
Number one.
Won a national championship. But who was he battling with? Blaine Gabbert.
Blaine
Gabbert. As Stephen A. was, Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah.
That's Trubisky to me.
Yep. I mean, although Ben Roethlisberger kind of came out of nowhere and went high up in the draft, and people really weren't talking a lot about him till right before the draft.
Yeah, but he went to Miami of Ohio. Here's a guy who went to North Carolina.
Yep. And by the way, Carson Wentz, kind of the same thing, and Carson Wentz balled out last year.
North Dakota State, though.
Sometimes they're right.
North Dakota State won.
All right, Donovan, we appreciate you. Thank you so much. Give it up for Donovan McNabb. We'll see you soon. Up next, my favorite part of the show, we're taking a trip to Mollywood, where the good people of Philadelphia get to put these two on the hot seat. First take on the road for the NFL Draft. Shout out to the